Share application, screen 1, share. Vocal check, 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. Oh, wait a minute here. I said, there we go. That's being shared. All right, good. And we're recording. All right. So my switch has got actually some existing configuration on it. So here's an Ethernet switch. These are the 2960 Ethernet switches from Cisco. This is a enterprise type of a switch. It's managed. It's got 24 fast Ethernet ports, which in today's modern environment, you would probably go with a gigabit Ethernet switch. It has 2 uplink ports that are gigabit Ethernet. It has built-in wired 1 gigabit ports, and you can plug in an adapter if you need to use fiber optic cable. You can plug in an adapter into those slots and run a piece of fiber optic cable if you want to. You have to use either the built-in RJ45 for the gigabit Ethernet, or you plug in the adapter. You can't do both at the same time, one or the other. Now they make switches, and the ones that switches we have in our wiring closet are gigabit Ethernet on all the ports, and all this blank sheet metal here is 24 more ports. Because our wiring closet is right around the corner there, you can hear it because of noise. You can hear all the fans going. That's about as big as a bathroom stall. And so we got racks in there, and if we use these type of switches, there wouldn't be enough space in the racks. So, and also those switches have power over Ethernet. These switches we use in Academy don't. Power over Ethernet is used if you need to provide power to, say, a Cisco IP telephone, a Wi-Fi access point, a surveillance camera. We don't have any surveillance cameras in here. The president of the campus says, no, that violates your privacy. We can't have any surveillance cameras in here. So instead, they put windows in here. So the people can look through the windows and see stuff. We had some people about 15 years ago, they were taking mice or something like this. How much is a mouse? $2. So we said, we need to put in surveillance cameras. And the president of the campus says, no, we can't do that. All right, so fine. We can see one way or the other. Now, switches don't have switches. Our routers have got on-off power switches. Switches don't have switches. Why? I think a good reason why there's no switches. Yeah, because someone will go in the closet and turn it off. Some jackleg technician will turn it off by mistake. He'll bump it with a cable or something. So switches don't have switches. So how do I turn on the power on the switch? Well, there was a thing about that in the slide I talked to on Thursday. You either have to plug it into an outlet strip and turn it on and off, or we're not going to plug an outlet strip, so we'll turn that off. So you have to pull the plug loose. So there was a slide that talked about if you want to get the boot mode, you have to unplug it, plug it back in, and do something. I'm going to illustrate that now. But before that, I'm going to reboot the machine. I'm going to show 2 other things, and then I'll show that boot mode. So this switch has configuration on it. You can tell because it has a host name already. And Pure's machine said, oh, I got to put in the name of the password. He had to put in the Cisco in class password because someone forgot to erase it before they finished the last time. So anytime we start a lab, we want to make sure that there's no existing configuration. If there is on there, we're gonna kill it, and we're gonna reboot the switch. So I'm gonna show, and there was one other thing we need to do before I reboot the switch. So first of all, I'm going to erase the existing configuration. Okay, I'm in a switch here that it doesn't appear to have any passwords. So what's the command that I can see if there's something where we save our startup configuration? Remember that command? Show startup-config, or show start for short. Well, I'm in the user exec mode, and that's not a command that I can do. When you go in the user exec mode, bring focus to the screen. When I'm in the user exec mode and I do the question mark command to see all the things you can do in the user exec mode, that's kind of a read only. You can't do much stuff. So there's only like 1.5 screens of stuff. So I'll go to the privilege exec mode. When I do the help command there, I got 1, 2, 3, 3.5 screens of stuff you can do at the privilege exec mode, because that's where you configure stuff and you can do show commands and show stuff. So I'm going to type show startup config. I could simply type start, and that would work because most commands can be abbreviated. So there's an existing startup configuration. I have a host name for this router, for the switches, host name S1. It has the SVI, the switch virtual interface, which is the VLAN 1, has an IP address because I was testing the connection to make sure I could ping from my VMware Workstation to the switch. So there's an existing configuration on there. No passwords have been set. Okay, so what I need to do to erase the startup configuration. Type the command erase. And this command is one where abbreviations are not allowed. You must spell out startup-config because this is a very dangerous, crucial, irreversible step you're doing when you erase the configuration on the router. But just use tab completion. Type erase star or start and touch the tab key. It'll spell it out. And he's going to warn me. Warning Will Robinson. You have to press enter again. Now it's erased. Now, notice that I've erased the startup configuration. Now, if I do show start on, but what's the difference between the startup configuration and the running configuration? The startup configuration is stored in the NVRAM, which is permanent memory that you don't lose it when you turn the device off and on again. So we use the NVRAM so we can save the working good configuration. And if the device happens to lose power and comes back on again, it doesn't have to be reconfigured. It's just going to boot right back up again. Just like if you turn Windows off and on again, you don't have to reinstall Windows. It saves the configuration on there. But our startup configuration, let's do a show, our running configuration. Our running configuration is all still there. The running configuration exists in the RAM memory. Okay, so regardless of what you may have seen on that crime television show, CSI Tulsa, where they take the Freon spray and they spray the RAM chips and they recover the stuff the hacker had, that's nonsense. That's not real world. What happens in RAM memory has to be refreshed 1,000 times a second with voltage pulses. So what happens when I remove the power after the first 1,000th of a second of the data that was in that RAM chips? It's gone. It's evaporated. There's no way to get it back. No way in the world. So we use non-volatile memory. We just spinning hard disk drive or flash drive or SSD drive or something to save our information. So on Cisco devices, they use NVRAM on the routers. On the switches, it's simulated NVRAM. It uses the flash memory, which is non-volatile RAM. So it's still in there. How do I get rid of what's in the memory, though? Control-Alt-Delete. On a Windows machine, you press Control-Alt-Delete, you reboot it. If I press Control-Alt-Delete on my switch, it'll bring up my Windows. It won't do anything to the device. So we have a text command. We have to type in reload. And reload will warn you. Sometimes it'll warn you there's an existing configuration on there. And if you answer yes, it'll restore it back to the NVRAM again. And you have to say no, don't save it, and then press it again to get it to reboot. But before I do that, we need to check a couple of other things. In the back page of your lab, there's a thing about before you ever start using a switch, there's a couple of things you need to check on a switch. On a router, it's easy. You just do a erase, start, and reload, and the router is completely guaranteed empty. On a switch, you've got 3 things to worry about. Okay, they talk about 2 of them in the back page of the lab. They talk about 1 on the front page of the lab. Okay, so let's check. The first thing I need to check for is do the dir command, or in there he says do show flash. They both show the same thing. It's a list of all the files in the routers and switches don't have spinning Rust hard disk drives in them because they're moving parts so they can jam up. So they use flash memory, like a flash, USB flash drive. No moving parts. We should expect it to last 10 or 20 years, okay? It's slow. That's why Cisco devices, when they boot up, they take the iOS operating system that's in the flash drive and they load it into the RAM memory, and then it's executed from RAM real fast. Windows does the same thing. When you boot Windows off the hard drive, he loads Windows modules and subroutines into the RAM memory, and then he executes it from RAM. What's the one thing you can do? What are the 2 things you can do to speed up your old Windows machine? Get more RAM. That'll speed it up. Second thing you can do is get an SSD drive, which I saw them at Walmart for $19, and migrate all your data from your existing hard disk drive to your flash drive. That'll really speed up an old machine. You can do stuff like that. Okay, we need to check and see if there's any file in here, and there's not one in this one. There may be one in your screen print in your lab. Oh, no fair. We haven't talked about VLANs yet. If you guys took routing and switching essentials, you had VLANs already. You know about that. A VLAN is a thing you can create on a switch where if I want ports 1 through 12 to go to the marketing department and ports 13 through 24 to go to the graphics department, I can split it up into 2 broadcast domains, 2 subnets. And we'll have to do VLAN routing, and we'll do that. We'll do that in this course. So if I define ports 13 through 24 and made them in VLAN 20 and ports 1 through 12 are in VLAN 10, there's going to be a file in here called VLAN.dat. Okay? So if that's existing on your switch, it needs to be gotten rid of. Well, try that on your switch. Type the dir command on your switch. and see if there's a VLAN.dat file present. If it is, you're going to have to get rid of it. And he tells you that in there, the instructions to get rid of it are, you have to type delete VLAN.dat and press enter 3 times, because it's a crucial thing. You have to press enter and confirm it 3 times. And then you have to reload the switch to make sure it works okay. Okay, mine doesn't have one. Yes, yes. Sorry, can't hear you. Oh, you have to do the privilege second one. Type EN for enable and press enter. And type DIR. And good, you have no VLAN on that. Okay, good. You have a VLAN on that? You are? Okay, so type delete or DEL for short. And then type out the spelling. Type delete and a space. And then the VLAN.dat spelling of the file. Press enter 3 times. Did you have one? Okay, type the DIR command, like the directory in DOS. DIR. Press enter. DIR. I. No, it's DIR. You're okay. You're okay. You don't have a VLAN file. Anybody else have a VLAN file having trouble getting rid of it? Okay. Now, normally you would reload the switch at this point, but we have one more thing to check on this, because in this particular lab, we're going to put some IP version 6 addresses on the switch. And there's a new thing in these switches called the Switch Database Manager, SDM. And he talks about this on the first page of the lab. He talks about this, I'm sorry, on page 2 of the lab. We need to check and see, and everyone's going to have to do this because the switches forget after a little bit if you don't reset this. So what he says is you should be at the privilege exec mode, and you should type the command. It's right toward the middle of page 2 on your lab, and the command is show SDM preferences. And it's probably going to say default. All you guys is probably going to say default. So the default configuration of the switch only supports legacy IPv4 management address, you know, like 192.168.1.2 or something like that. So we need to add a command here so that he will also accept IP version 6 stuff. So he shows you that the code there is right in the middle of the page. We're going to type configure terminal, config T for short. The prompt is going to change to switch config for your switch, because you probably haven't get a host name yet. And he says to type the command. You see that long line SDM prefer dual? SDM E. The shorthand, I typed SDM, I typed P and touched the tab key, it made it prefer. I typed DU and touched the tab key, and it made it dual. And that's going to set it where we can put IP. Oops, I'm sorry. Default. At the top of the whole command. I notice that it's been set. It's been stored, but what should you have to do now? Well, 3 things. We had to delete the VLAN.dat file. We had to erase the startup-config file. We had to do this so we can put IPv6 address on it. Now we can reload the box. Okay, now you can't reload from the privilege exec mode. Well, you can if you put the word do in front of it. But I'm going to type Control Z and get back to the pure old privilege exec mode, and I'm going to type reload. Oh, sorry. Reload. Now look, this is the gotcha. This is like if you're working on Microsoft Word and you click the X in the upper right-hand corner of Microsoft Word and you haven't saved your document recently. Of course, Microsoft treats you like you're an idiot, right? He says, wait, you didn't save it. You know, I'm going to give you one last chance here to save this document because you're quitting the document. It has not yet been saved yet. And you can click, oh, okay, save the document. So if I did this reload command and I changed the configuration, maybe in a production environment, and I forgot to save it, he would have warned me right there. Oh, you better save this. Maybe you changed an IP address or a password or something, and you're reloading the box. But in this case, we want it to be blank. So I'm not going to say yes. I'm going to say no. So I'll say no. Now, one last warning, Will Robinson. Proceed with the reload, and it's going to reload. Now, I'm going to stop mine. I can do it in time here. I have to press the mode key. There's a green flashing light All you guys that started yours, I can see green flashing lights on your switches in the back of the room in the lab. And I need to hold this down until it stops flashing and turns amber for a second. And it's so long that it'll make your finger will start to get sore. I think that's it. Oh, I didn't make it in time. Okay, so that's okay. Switches don't have switches that turn the power off. I'm going to reapply power. And I'll watch that light again. I'm going to watch the light flash. It's flashing green, 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 green. And if it works, I'm going to get a boot prompt on the screen. You guys don't have to do this because you're, I'm not having you guys do the boot screen. I'm just showing this because it was mentioned in the lecture. That works. Okay. So later on, we're going to cover something called password recovery. So on a Windows machine, you guys know about safe mode? A+ guys in here? If there's a problem, let's say you install a brand new video graphics heavy duty with a faster processor than your whole damn computer's got on it. And the screen is jazzed out, it's not working. So you want to go into the safe mode, which is going to be 640 by 480 resolution on your desktop PC, and then you'll be able to go in there and fix the problem with the device driver or whatever's causing the problem. Okay. I'm sorry. What's your last name? Sorry. K-A. Oh, David. David. No. Oh, Kalo. Yeah. Yinj guy, Gaspard Kalo. Yes. Okay, good. See if you can log in with your old password from last year, and if not, we'll help you a little bit later here because we're already going. Because I'd love to give you a check mark for your password issue. You have to log in with your whole Yinj Kalo at my.tcc.edu as a username, and then use your old password from last year, see if it still works. And if not, I'll get you on with a temporary ID, and we can resolve that later. So on the Windows machine, you can hold down F5. Sometimes it's F8. Sometimes it's a shift key, depending on the version of Windows, and it'll allow you to go into the recovery mode or the safe mode or the safe mode with networking. Every version of Windows is a little different, and you can fix stuff with it. Okay. So on the switches, if we want to get, we might want to get in the boot mode. A couple of things we might want to get in the boot mode with. Maybe we want to replace the iOS file because it got hosed. Most commonly, we want to get into the boot mode because you're hired as a new Cisco guy, and the last guy, he was a real jerk. He didn't write the passwords down, or probably more likely, when they told him this Friday, change the passwords so then we could do stuff before he left. So no one knows what the passwords are. Well, enable secret password, it's encrypted. We can't even see it. So this allows you to perform a procedure. You don't care what that last guy's password was. You just want to set up the password you know because you're now responsible for administrating the machine. We do the same thing with servers, Windows servers. Okay, so the guy who was running the Windows servers got mad and left the company and changed all the passwords, changed the administrative password. And now you can't get in the machine and what's your job? Changing people's passwords to forget them every day, right? Or changing permissions and files and things like that. You can't do it. You don't know the password. So on a Windows machine, yeah, we can put in a little boot USB with a recovery thing where we can get in there and we can punch a brand new password that we know right into the Windows registry, the SAM database, the Security Access Manager database, and we can change that administrative password to something we know. We don't care where this password used to be. We just want it to be something I know. See, the new guy changed it to his favorite admin password, and then he can get to the machine and do stuff. So there's a procedure. I'm not going to go do this now. We'll do this later on. But there's a procedure where you go into and you can essentially bypass that enable secret password that was in the startup configuration file, which you don't know what it is now. Okay, so we're in the boot mode now. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it and plug it back in again and let it boot up normally. So I killed the startup configuration, right? Did I do a restart? I did the VLAN. I didn't have a VLAN on mine. If it had been there, I would have deleted the VLAN.dot file. A couple of you guys had to do the delete the VLAN file. And then I did the SDM preference thing, dual default. So when it boots up again, it should say, oh, it's okay for you to put an IP address on me now. So I'm unplugging it, and we get to watch the thing boot up gloriously all by itself now. This is kind of like watching grass grow kind of like watching paint dry. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes for a switch or router to boot up. You know, the new routers, they've got faster CPUs, they got more memory. It's kind of like Windows 10. How long does it take Windows 10 to boot up? Gosh, it seems like it takes a minute or something. Remember the old machines with floppy disk drives? You turn them on, they boot up in 5 seconds. That's progress. New machines are faster, and they boot up, and it takes longer to boot up. But they're faster. They take longer to boot up. So when a PC boots up, I'm sorry, when a Cisco router switch boots up, he does a power on self-test, the post. He's checking the hardware and making sure there's no grievous errors. Then the next thing he does is he's going to look for what he should be booting up, which iOS should he be booting up. He takes a quick sneak peek at the startup configuration to see if there's any boot system commands in there. We had a slide on the boot system command. It's kind of like dual boot on a Windows PC. You can have Windows or Linux, and you can boot one or the other. Windows has got Linux has got a grub menu. You can tell it to boot up the old Windows, boot up the new Linux. So on a Cisco device, we can put a command in the boot system. We can go to the configuration and say boot system and give the file name of that alternate iOS in case we're trying a new alternate iOS in our production environment and we need to test for a bug fix or something. But we don't want to get rid of our old one because what if there's a problem? We can't roll back. So we can always roll back. We can boot system the old file name and go back to the old one if it didn't solve the problem. And if maybe there's new bugs in the new iOS, it's even worse than the old one. And so a Windows machine is now going to proceed to load the Windows files off the hard disk drive into RAM memory. And what the Cisco device is, he's going to load the iOS file, the memory, the code that iOS is, from the flash drive, which is really, really, really slow, into the RAM memory, which is really fast. And he's going to execute the RAM. Okay, he's finished with the flash drive now. Now he's actually booting up the operating system. And the operating system is checking it out and finding the interfaces. And the switch is booting in mysterious patterns with dancing patterns at lateral arabesques you've never seen before. And eventually, in a few seconds, the switch will be ready to accept my commands. And I'm going to check it and make sure that everything happened. I should find no startup configuration. I should find no VLAN. I should find it's okay to put an IPv6 now when it starts up. So he's almost down here. So this is the equivalent, kind of the equivalent. This is like, any of you guys ever installed Linux? Come on, you guys need to go with Linux. Every networking management device in the future and now is going to run on Linux. You need to get an introduction to Linux, okay? You can go to Red Hat and get a free copy of Red Hat Enterprise Linux for nothing, and you can take their free Linux course and learn a little bit about Linux. Okay, I strongly encourage you. That's the one thing a network professional is the best thing to boost his career is learn some Linux in addition to the CCNA routing and switching and all the other stuff that we cover, security, things like that. Okay, I think he's done here. Okay, so normally when you boot a switch up and it has no existing configuration, you get this little warning what happens. Okay. So the switch is totally erased. Do you want to go into the initial configuration dialog? And don't answer yes to that. If you happen to actually answer yes to that, I'll say yes. He asked you a bunch of weird questions about management protocol. Simple network management protocol, stuff like that. I didn't want that stuff. Oh, no, I don't want to do that stuff. How do I get out of there? Control-C. Pops right out of it. Accidentally answer yes instead of no. Just pop out of it. Now, sometimes on routers, when a router has a serial port connected to an adjacent router, he will also ask you, do you want to terminate auto configuration? And you want to answer yes to that. But switches don't have serial ports, so you won't get that on the switch. So now it looks like on the switch, the default hosting for a switch is switch. I'm in the user exec mode, which is that caret greater than symbol. I only have a limited number of screens of commands. There's no password set. So should I be able to go to the privileged exec mode by typing enable? There's no password set. It takes me right to it. Okay. Now, you're still, what? You still has a password? Oh, you didn't erase the startup configuration, maybe. Do a show start. Oh, you still have a hosting? Okay, you didn't erase it. Go to EN, type EN. Yes. Okay, type the word erase. Space. And type the word star or start, either one. And then touch the tab key. No, I'm sorry. Type the letter S-T-A-R. Spell the word star. Now touch the tab key. Press enter. Press enter one more time. And type reload. Press enter a couple times to get a clean prompt. That's a Cisco one. Press enter one more time. Okay. When it comes up again, it'll be clean. Thank you. The problem is if you have an existing configuration of any kind on the switch, you can tell because of an existing startup configuration. It could have some command that conflicts with what you're trying to do. So you should always make sure that's erased. Okay, so let's make sure mine's erased here. It looks like a clean switch. I do show IP interface brief. Everything's unassigned. There's no VLAN address. Everything's clean, cool. Okay, so I'm going to do the show start again. Show startup configuration. Not present. Okay, good. What was the second thing we're supposed to check? dir command. No VLAN.dat file present there. Good, good, good. Now let's do that show SDM preferences. Dual. It's dual. We're cool. We can put because in this lab we're supposed to put an IPv4 management address and an IPv6 management address. All right. Okay, now let's actually go through and step. I'm going to step through the lab here with you guys. Were you able to log onto your work? Were you able to log into your password? Okay. No. Let me log into a temporary password for you so you can do stuff. All right. Let's see if I'll do a temporary password. Oops, I misspelled it. I think it's going to work. Yeah, it's going to, okay, it's working. It's going to take a second before the files are created. So I need to give you, I can't give you a check on your password. Hang loose after class and we'll see if we can get this resolved for you, okay? Because the guys in there that have the ability to change passwords, they can't get their passwords. In the system management world, system administration world, if you're a system administrator who changes people's passwords, you should not use your everyday, you should have an everyday login account that you use that's not privileged. Okay, if you're super privileged administrator, it hides problems from you. And besides, you shouldn't say logged into your system administrator privilege account to use to reset other people's passwords with, because it has too many permissions so someone else could jack onto it. So use your normal account, unprivileged account to do normal stuff. If someone calls up and says, hey, reset my password, you'll jump over, you'll log into the system administrator account, you'll fix the guy's password, you'll log out of it again. Okay, so I checked my machine and the SDM preference is okay. There's no existing startup configuration file, and we can go through and start doing this lab. Now I've cabled the stuff for you. In the bottom of page 2, it talks about cabling the network. So there's 2 wires required here. You can see if you look at all these switches back here, that there is a yellow wire, which is an Ethernet cable. Every switch has got that plugged into port number 6. What I like to do when I do these labs is tear off the front page, and that shows the wiring, physical wiring, physical layer stuff. 75% of all problems in networks are physical layer problems. Yeah, I had this plugged into the wrong port. I had the wrong letter of the alphabet. He was getting a big nothing. There's a physical layer problem. So in this particular lab, they show you that solid black wire. That's the symbol for Ethernet connection. It's going from port 6 of the switch to the red port of your workstation. The red port. Everybody got the little 4-port panel patch point. Everybody's got their own 4-port patch panel. The red plug is PCA. Ethernet connection comes through PC, plugs into PCA. The next plug is green. That's PCB. So there's 2 Ethernet adapters in your computers that go to this. In addition to the motherboard Ethernet on your PC, which has a blue wire that goes off to our Tanner County College network. That's your connection to the internet. From your unprivileged Windows 10 desktop where you can't do stuff, because if we let you do stuff, you'd hose it. So that's why we give you Vmware. Run a copy of Vmware Workstation. If you're like the administrator, you're the God mode, you can do stuff on that. So the Vmware, 1 copy of Vmware PCA, goes to the red port, and the other copy of VMware PCB goes to the green port, and that goes back to the patch panel ports back there. Today, we're just using the red one for PCA. And the purple plug is the COM1 Teraterm adapter to plug the console port of your first Cisco device. And we have a second, the orange, is it amber? I don't know what that is. We have a second serial port. These PCs only come with one serial port. So we got a USB attached serial adapter. And that way you can run COM1 and COM3 at the same time. And like that, S1 and S2 from one workstation. PCA, PCB from one workstation. So the first few labs we can do, you're going to get away with just having to be at one workstation. There'll be some labs later where there's more than one device. And you might need to log into the workstation next to you and add some other devices. So the little line at the top, sometimes it's shown as a dotted line. That's the console cable. In the real world, that would be that. See that baby blue cable on the back of your PC? It's plugged into the serial port, and it plugs into your purple. That's your standard Cisco console cable. What are the three cable types CCNA responsible for? You guys keeping up with your CCNA objectives? There's an objective. What are the three types of cables? Yellow cable, straight through. Straight through cable. We use yellow. There could be any color. Straight through, 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3. Most cables for Ethernet are straight through cables. There's a second type of Ethernet cable that's called a crossover cross-connect cable. We used to have to use this before auto MDIX world. Like if you plug two switches together, you'd have to use a crossover cable. Plug two PCs together, you're backing up one PC to a new one, you'd have to plug that in. Nowadays, we got auto MDIX, and that gussies up the connection. Whether if you use a straight cable, it should have been a crossover. Use a crossover cable, it should have been straight. It'll flip the transistors and make the connection good for you. It'll get you a link line. Third type of cable type for Cisco CCNA is the baby blue rollover cable. That's a cable where they literally roll over the silver satin flat cable so that you don't accidentally try to plug it in and use it as an Ethernet cable. Ethernet's supposed to be twisted pair. Sometimes you have to shield it. Usually, 99% of the time, we don't have to shield it. Twisted pair is good enough. If you're next to a welding machine at Lockheed, yeah, you might need to shield it. If you use phone cable, silver satin cable for Ethernet, it'll work okay for short distances. It won't work real good for long distances. So Cisco, I think, deliberately made the rollover cable the rollover so that you wouldn't try to accidentally use it as an Ethernet cable. So we're cabled up. We've connected to the switch using Teraterm. Warning, Will Robinson. Be sure to use the Teraterm on your main Windows 10 desktop when you want to start one copy of Teraterm or two copies of Teraterm for your two console connections. There's a Teraterm present within the Windows VM, the PCA, the PCB Windows VM. Don't use that for Teraterm because it's in the VM. It's kind of isolated, has no connection. Use the Teraterm from your main desktop. Everybody's got two screens. What I recommend you guys do is use this screen for your VMware and use this screen for your two Teraterms. You can drag it any way you want to. We got some grant money a year ago, and we got new machines with big RAM and these big desktops, so you can spread out and do stuff.
Just close. I had to open it again. So is it going back to the same?
Every time you restart Teraterm, you're going to have to click that radio serial button that says serial and COM1, click OK, and press the key. Okay. Oh, you're stuck in the center again. Press the enter key a couple times. Oh, bad magic. Let's see. G, yellow. Oh, let's start Teraterm again. Make sure that you didn't click the wrong way. Kill it. Restart Teraterm. Okay, click the radio button that says serial. Click OK. And press the enter key. Okay. Oh, you got a password. Oh, no. Quick, Cisco. Okay, type enable class erase space star. Press tab after the word star. Press enter one more time. Type reload, R-E-L-O, and press enter. Press enter, and you're okay. You'll do it. Okay, I'm on page 3 of the lab. We're going to verify default configuration. We did this. There's no existing running startup configuration. Now there is an existing default running configuration, okay? So we can see that don't try to get rid of these lines, they're always in there. Different versions of iOS might look slightly differently, but you notice that there's no address for VLAN 1, there's no passwords, there's no host name. This default host name for switch is switch, default host name for router is router. And he has you some things to check here. How many fast Ethernet interfaces does this switch have? Well, 0/1 through 0/24. It's 24 of them. It has 2 gigabit ports. The range of values shown for the VTY lines is 0 through 15. It's kind of hard to look for that. It's 0 through 15. There's 16 available. 16 simultaneous users can Telnet or secure shell into a switch at the same time and do stuff. Okay, so now it says examine the startup configuration file, show star, and you can abbreviate when you're showing it. It's just you have to type it out completely when you're erasing it. There's no startup configuration file. And we haven't saved one yet. Now let's look at the characteristics of the SVI for VLAN 1. And he doesn't tell you the command here. It's show interface, VLAN 1. No IP address. Sometimes it's not up and up by itself. It's up and up for me because I had a port plugged in that was live. VLAN cannot come up until one of the ports assigned to that VLAN has a host plug into it. So, and the best practice always, of course, is type the no shutdown command. After you type the IP address of VLAN, we're going to do that in the lab. And it has a MAC address. It's up and up. Sometimes it'll be down and down because it's not plugged in yet. There's no IP properties. There's no IP address has been assigned yet. We're going to assign an IP address. We're going to assign IPv4 IP address, and we're going to assign an IPv6 IP address. Okay, what is the, okay, we did the F. I plugged the plug in. Oh, I see what the deal is. If the plug had not been plugged in yet, he tells you to plug the plug in. I had to do that for you guys. If he hadn't plugged the plug in yet, the VLAN would have been down. It wouldn't have been up and up yet. How do we find the iOS version? Show version. So I'll type show version. And that's all that stuff that flew. I got into the Linux thing. I forgot to finish my thought. When you start Linux, you get a bunch of stuff that shoots off the screen. And if you want to bring it back again, you can type a special Linux command called DMESG, demessage, and they'll pull it back where you can look for errors and stuff. On Cisco devices, stuff flows off the top of the screen. And the old versions of HyperTerminal had a scroll back bug. You couldn't go back and look at them. Teraterm's okay, you can scroll back and look at it. But you can just type show version and it'll bring most of that stuff up. So this tells me, I go to the very end of it here, that I'm running iOS version 15.2. All iOS versions, all iOS file names have a little C in the front and then the model name. This is 2960 switch. Then this has the LAN base, which is okay for Academy stuff. If you were a service provider, you might want more capabilities. The K9, that means that it has encryption. Doesn't mean dogs. So our older switches, our 2950 switches, didn't have the K9. They couldn't do encryption. That means you can't do secure shell. Because secure shell requires encryption. Public-private key pair stuff. But ours has got it. We'll be able to do that. Now, let's look at show interface. He types to show interface FA0/6. Oops. Oh, I fat fingered it. Plugged it into 5 instead of 6. So I took it out of 5, 5 went down. I put it in 6, 6 come up. Due to something called spanning tree protocol, it's going to take about 50 seconds before the light turns green. So I'm going to repeat the command. With the up arrow key, I'll repeat the command. Up and up. The first up means the physical layer. Oh, physical layer, the wire's there. The second up is the data link layer. Yeah, we're speaking Ethernet. Both of us are speaking Ethernet. make the characters bigger? Let me see if I can make them a little bigger. Hold on. What I normally do is I go in and set the font to 14. Let's see if we can make it any bigger than that. Oh, here we go. Is that better? That's as big as I can make it. And anytime you increase the font, here, hold on. I'll just repeat the command. So I'm plugging in port 6. It turned green. Spanning tree protocol we'll talk about later is a protocol that was in my 3 biggest heroes in computer science are girls. Radia Perlman invented spanning tree protocol so that when you plug bridges together, there wouldn't be broadcast storms. Okay, Commodore Hopper will work for the Navy. She's invented the term bug because they found a moth in one of the old mainframe computers. They typed it to the logbook. You have a bug. Okay. What's her name? The first computer programmer was a girl. What was her name? Lady Lovelace. In the Babbage machine, the Babbage computing machine in the 1800s, it was completely mechanical. She wrote the code for it. Those are my 3 big heroes in computer science. Heroines, they are. Okay, so port 6 is up and up. He has no IP address yet. We have not applied. Of course, he has a MAC address. It's a hardware address. It's always going to be there. Okay, it's up and up. It went up because we plugged a wire into it. It has a MAC address. What's the speed in duplex? It's 100 megabit, and it's full duplex. Okay, what is the default name of VLAN 1? There's no fair. He didn't show you the command for that. It show VLAN. They're bad about this. They give you something. We haven't covered that till next chapter. So VLANs, we're going to split switches into different subnets like you would do normally. You might split 12 ports for one department, 12 ports in another department. So the VLAN 1 is a special VLAN. It cannot be renamed. It cannot be deleted. And all of the ports on a switch that has no configuration are always assigned to VLAN 1 because 75% of these switches that ship into industry are never configured, but going small business is the backbone of America, right? 75% of the people that work in America work for small business. So they'll buy 1 or 2 of these switches and put it in their environment, their production environment, and no one will ever configure that switch. You know, just like someone goes to the office supply store and buys a little 5-port switch, there's no configuration. They're not managed. They can't be configured. They just want to connect all their devices together, all their employees' PCs and maybe a server. So VLAN 1 can't be deleted. There's some default ones that you can pay attention. You don't have to pay attention to those. Fiber distributed data interface, token ring, ArcNet. No one uses that stuff anymore. We use Ethernet. So don't worry about those. So we can have VLANs 1 through 1,000. We can make VLANs 1 to in our environment. Most even big companies usually only have 1 or 2 dozen VLANs. It's like they have 1 or 2 dozen groups on their system, on their file server software, marketing department, accounting department. It's much easier if you run a system administrator for a server, instead of putting permissions for 100 people that work in the accounting department one by one, you adjust the permissions for the accounting group and you drop them all into the membership in the accounting group, in the Microsoft Windows users and groups. So later on, in a later class, we're going to assign some ports to VLAN 10, some ports to VLAN 20, and we can arbitrarily name those anything we want to. Okay, it said show flash. We did this before. It's like there's a dir, the old dir command in DOS is like show flash, unless you do that. So here is our iOS. C2960 land-based K9. Remember that before? K9 means has encryption. MZ means it's a compressed file stored in the flash memory and it's expanded into the RAM that loads up, and then it gives the version number 59. So Cisco released some new switch, iOS, that fixed a problem. And by the way, do you guys know about the secret Cisco Catalyst lifetime warranty? If you're the original purchaser of a Cisco switch, you get a forever lifetime warranty. So if you don't like the switch you bought 10 years ago that's out of date, and you're the original purchaser, under no circumstances should you take a 9-volt battery and plug it into one of the switch ports to pop it. Because if you did and send it back, they would have to send you a brand new switch with new features. So don't do that. That would be wrong. If there's any type of hardware failure with a Cisco Catalyst switch and you're the original owner, you get free hardware lifetime warranty. if there's a bug fix in any Cisco device, not just their switches, that has a security violation, a security vulnerability, even if you don't subscribe to their horrendously overpriced service maintenance contract, SmartNet, if it's a security thing, you can ask for a free security update. You get the free iOS and upload that. Even if you don't subscribe to SmartNet, you can call them and get that. Okay, part 2, we're going to configure some stuff. He gives some commands here. I'm going to, so I say I need to be in the global configuration mode, config T for short. I'm going to say no IP domain lookup. Oops. And that means if you do that, that means if you mistype a command, you'll have to sit there and wait for a minute while if you type a command and you misspell it, he kind of looks around and says, oh, I must look for a server with that name. And you have to stop for a second. So when you type this command, like if I type shoe instead of show, I immediately get my prompt back. Hi. Please come and have a seat. Try to log in with your old password. Is it David?
Yes, sir. I'll see you last class.
See if you can get in with your old password. If not, I'll log in with a temporary password for now. Okay, I'm not going to do service password encryption. I'm not going to do the passwords right now. I'll let you guys do that. Banner message of the day. We talked about this in the slideshow last time. That's so you can put up a warning that says your lawyers at your company will tell you what yours has to say. Get out of here, you now. Authorized users only. Everything's being tracked. If you disagree, leave now. Stuff like this. Okay, now step B. We're going to set the SVI IP address of the switch. And we're going to do the IP version 4 method. That's why I like to tear off the front page so I can look at that. So I'm going to go to interface VLAN 1. I think it's easy typing on the screen with a bunch of people looking at you. Get your own class. Interface VLAN 1. And then we're going to use the command to apply the IP address. And the chart says that the IP address is 192.168.1.2. 255.255.255.0. And I'll do a no shutdown just in case. I think it was up and up anyway, but I'll do it just in case. Oh, I'm sorry. I did VLAN 1. I was supposed to do VLAN 99. Okay. I'm going to say, so I'll say no IP address. And I'm going to go to interface VLAN 99. IP address. Should be able to do this. Let's see. Config T, interface VLAN 99, and there it is. Do no shutdown. It's going to have trouble coming up and up because we haven't assigned any ports to VLAN 99 yet. I think he's skipping a step here. Oh, assign all user ports to VLAN 99. I'll just do my port 6. You guys know about interface range. You can take 12 ports or 24 ports and do a command like shut them all down, assign them all to VLAN. So you have to do stuff over and over. What if you had a 400 port switch? Okay, so I'll say interface fast Ethernet 0/6 switch port mode access. Switch port, access, VLAN 99, and oh, I didn't create it first. Well, as a courtesy to you, if VLAN 99 hasn't been created and you assign a switch port to VLAN, he'll go ahead and create that. Sound like a smoke alarm cheap. Now when I do the show VLAN ports command, which is no fair, we haven't done this yet, we can see that all the other ports remain. The default VLAN 99. So I should have communication between the PCA, VMware, and that when we get to that point. Oh, he says type the command show VLAN brief. It's like show VLAN, but you don't get a bunch of garbage at the bottom. Shows the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and put the passwords in here because I think we may have a problem with Secure Shell if we don't do the passwords. So configure terminal. He didn't tell me to do the, I'm going to do the host name with a switch first because when you have more than one switch, if you don't do S1, S2 right away, you get mixed up as to which one it is. So I'll go configure terminal and host name S1. That way the prompt is always at S1. I know what it's doing. Oh, he tells me to do the default gateway. I can safely skip that because there's no actual router in here. Oh. IP default gateway 192.168.1.1 maybe. Might be the router. There's no real router here. Our switch is 1.2, and our host PC is going to be, what is it, 1.10. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put passwords in here because he's talking about that. So I'll go line console 0. Password should be Cisco. And then line VTY 0 through 4. Same thing, password Cisco. And then enable secret class. That's the enable secret password. When you which mode? When you exec mode, how do you get to which mode? Oh, config T, configure terminal, config T. And then to get out of config T, you go to control C. Oh, you're stuck in the setup routine? If you actually answer yes to the, do you want to do the setup mode, just say control C out of it. Now he has some, at the bottom of page 5, he's got some additional hints here. I'll do line console 0 and logging synchronous is if I call them Cisco annoyances. You're typing on, say you do a no shutdown, then you press the enter key, and you start typing an IP address or something. All of a sudden it goes jagger, jag, 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 and he slams a status message on the screen and splits your command in half. Logging synchronous will fix that for you. So when something pops up on the screen, your line will appear again at the bottom, clean, right where you were typing. So it doesn't give you such a headache. Okay, and I did the command for the Telnet access. I did line VTY 0 through 4, login. Did I do the login? Let's check and see. Code. If in doubt, check the code. And the stuff, the login passwords are at the bottom. I did do the password for the BT. Oh yeah, I did password Cisco login. Line console password Cisco. Okay, I did do login on the console 0. Line console 0. Login. There we go. Okay, so just to test, I'm going to log off of the router. I'm going to log off of the switch. And I should have to type the word Cisco to be able to get back into the console port. And if I type enable, I should have to type class. Let's make sure I didn't mistype it. So we don't have to do password recovery. So the login, if you type the password, say password Cisco, but you don't type the word login, you have not enabled logins. So two commands on the console port and the VTY port to make that take place. Now we're going to go to my VMware Workstation and do some stuff on that. Now, my VMware is set to another address, so I'm going to change it to another address. Now, in Windows, there's always 9 ways to get to any particular screen. We need to get to the control panel where we can adjust the IP address. This is something you can't do on our Windows 10 desktop machines that our students normally use because the students would hose up the IP connection. But on our VMware, you're the administrator, you're the God mode, you can do this stuff. So I'm going to use the shorthand command, ncpa.cpl, to go to the control panel. You can also click on the, where is it? There's usually a thing on the bottom you can click here. This one here on the main screen, it looks kind of like that. You can click on that, and you can bring up the network control panel. I'm going to right click on the control panel. Oops, back to my screen here. Right click on the control panel and choose properties. And we want to do IP version 4. I guess I'm going to go ahead and turn on 6 now, but we'll do that a little bit later. I'm going to double click on this. Now, if there's an existing address in there that's not correct, for example, ours is supposed to be 192. something. The quick and dirty method, the Gonzo super secret insider tip of the day for Windows network control panels, just click the DHCP button, obtain the IP address automatically, then click back again, and that will quickly erase it. And on the front page, my PC-A is said to be 192.168.1.1. 192.1.10. And notice how Windows says, oh, that's a 192 number in the first octet. That should be what we call a legacy class C type address. And he put in the proper network. He put in the most common subnet mask in the world, the /24, the 255.255.255.0. So I'll click OK. And I'll click OK. And I'll close this. And at the bottom of these VMs, there's well, my DOS screen's already here. If you click on that little thing there at the bottom, that'll bring up the DOS prompt. Or you can type run cmd command. Again, there's like several ways to do this usually in Windows. Okay, so what do we do in the DOS prompt or the command prompt from Windows to check what's the current IP settings for that interface? ipconfig, all one word. And he tells me that I am 192.168.1.10. And there's my default IP version 6 addresses. Oh, I was supposed to put an IP version 6 address. Let me do that. I see I missed that step. So I'll do CPL. He gave me an IP address to give to the workstation. So I'll go back to the Windows network property. I'll double click on IP version 6. And he doesn't want to use the randomly generated one. It should be for PCA 2001 DBA ACAD. Looks like I got an extra letter in it. I'm going to kill that letter. And it should be about right.
Trying to open the virtual PC, but for some reason not letting me open it.
Bring up the Windows, leave it running. Now type Windows key and the letter E on your keyboard. We're going to bring up the Windows File Manager. Hold down the Win key, touch the E. Open the C folder, open the C drive, double click on the C drive. Double click the V folder. And that shortcut A, double click, not that one, the shortcut, double click the shortcut. Yeah, double click it. Click OK. There it is. Now you can start your PCA. You don't need your PCV today. Okay, so let's see, did I do this correctly? It should be 2001 DBA ACAD colon. There's a misprint on the lab. It should be ::3. The /64 is normal, and the FE, the FE colon in the address is different. I'll change it to 3. It won't matter in this lab because we don't actually have a router. Okay, I'll click OK to accept those values. Click OK again. And now I'll repeat that ipconfig command. 2001 DBA ACAD : 3. Okay. So that should be proper. Okay, now we're supposed to go back to the switch configuration. So I'll go back to the Teraterm. And we're going to do the show run command to show the running configuration. We already looked at that. In this case, it's got all the passwords. It's got our IP address. Did he tell us to put in the IPv6 address? I don't remember him telling us to do that, but I'll do that. I'll go to config T, interface VLAN 99, IPv6 address, and it's supposed to be 2001 DB8 ACAD 2/64. And I'll do no shutdown just in case. I think I already did that. All right. Okay, now I'm going to go to near the top of page 8 and go back to our PC. And we're going to use our ping utility, which is our great utility that we use for checking network connectivity. Ping is a layer 3 network utility, uses Internet Control Message Protocol, ICMP, echo request, echo reply. It's like sonar. You guys remember the movie The Hunt for Red October? And Sean Connery's playing the Russian submarine commander. He says, "Comrade, verify the range to the enemy. 1 ping only, please." Because he's sending Morse code to the American guy. He's gonna defect and turn the submarine over to the Americans. So I'm gonna ping 192.168.1.2, which is our switch from my PC. Okay, so we got 3 pings here. Okay, why did the first ping time out? ARP. Good. The ARP request has to line up the layer 2 MAC address with the layer 3 IP address. And that usually kills the first ping. If I do it again, it's fine. How long does ARP remain in memory? Maybe 3 minutes. Because you could close your laptop computer and run over to the library. If they were allowing people to go in the library, and I don't think they do. And you could be on a different subnet in the library in less than 3 minutes. So ARP is fleeting and transitory and fades away. Okay, now we're going to try the Telnet capability to the switch. And we did set line VTY04 password, login, password Cisco. She'll be able to log into the switch with that. So here's the Teraterm here. Don't try to use this to go out to the serial port. It's kind of grayed out. I'm going to click the Telnet port, 192.168.1.2, and the password Cisco, and I'm logged into the switch remotely. Instead of being down in the hot machine room with all the fans running so loud, I got to wear ear protection. I'm back up in the extreme cool and comfort of IT cubicle land, and I've logged into the switch to do it. Maybe it's in a data center across the country. I'm logged into it. Now, the MAC address table. We talked about the MAC address table. I want to do show MAC address table. And there's nothing plugged in anything except port 6 of this switch, my VM port. So he said, well, look, there's a bunch of static stuff at the top. Ignore that, just the dynamic. There's the MAC address of my VMware. It's plugged in port 6. So don't you think the IT department can't tell where you're plugged in? Heck yes, they know what your MAC address is. They know what port you're plugged in. That agreement you had to sign when you went to work that says I'm not going to jack around with the plugs and jacks and move stuff. They know. They probably have management software. They're getting alerts when you screw with that stuff. Okay, so I should be able to go to the privilege exec mode by typing class, and I'm at the privilege exec mode. Okay, so we looked at the MAC address table. We determined that it's learned port 6. And it gives you some other stuff in there. You can set up static addresses if you want to. I'll let you guys do that. At the end of most of these labs, there's reflection questions. I do not require the reflection questions. They're kind of in the vein of what we call it in the education industry, in the grievance studies department. How do you feel about this? Don't have to do those. But please answer the other questions in there, okay? So I think I've covered what I needed to cover on this. You guys go ahead and perform the lab, step to the lab, put your, answer the reflection questions. Please answer the other questions he has. And when you're done, please turn in the lab to me.